Water, a long time, I haven't really, did you really?
So, we're gonna start out by first going around and introducing ourselves. And I'm gonna start out with Larry, who's gonna be our speaker this morning. And Larry will also give us a question that we can all answer about hydroponics or something as we introduce ourselves. So Larry.
I have to do the work already?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Larry Cipolla.
We'll have everybody introduce themselves. But
Sure.
tell us.
Larry Cipolla, I've been a master gardener for about 13 years. My specialty is vegetables and herbs, and basically different ways of growing vegetables and herbs. And today we're going to talk about how to grow them hydroponically. Does anyone know what that means?
Yes.
Water.
With water?
Water.
Yeah. You grow in water, yeah? Do you use any dirt at all, any soil?
No.
Okay. How can you grow things? Do any of you have houseplants?
Mm-hmm.
Do any of you kill a houseplant?
Yes. More often. Yes, we are.
What did you do to kill that houseplant?
Overwatered.
Well, wait a minute. If you overwater, then how can I raise vegetables in water?
If you have talent.
Green thumb. The trick to hydroponics. A good answer, by the way. The trick to hydroponics. Plants don't grow in soil, and they don't grow in water. They grow in air. So in your garden, for example, the air channels between what we call the soil molecules, the soil just supports the root structure and the plant itself. Your tree in your backyard, it's not growing in soil, but the soil just supports the tree itself. And if you've ever been to places like Asia, for example, the roots run along horizontally on the ground. I mean, they're in the ground a bit, but it's not like an oak tree that sends the root system vertically. So it supports it. So what you do is, this is called a net pot, and this is what you're going to be working with today, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But first show you what my vegetables look like and the root system. It's a Russian variety of kale, but I just take the side leaves off and continuously harvest. So I've been harvesting what's left of this tote since January, and I have 6 of these in my basement, and so I garden basically 12 months out of the year. I don't know if you've heard any little stories about romaine lettuce. That's just one problem that we're having, and it seems like we're getting in the United States a lot more diseases or problems with growing our vegetables. Hydroponics, you use no herbicides, you use no pesticides. So it's just plain water and this fertilizer that's made for hydroponics, and that's pretty much it. So what we're going to have you do today is, this is called the tote, and we're going to have you use something called perlite and peat. This is your soil, and this just supports the root structure and the seeds. And so you're going to fill this net pot just like I'm doing. You don't need to press on it, step on it with your foot. No, just kind of get enough of the perlite peat. And we're going to have you put in about 3 or 4 seeds, and we're going to watch them grow. I'm going to harvest them or germinate them at home, and at some point maybe we can bring them back to let you see what they look like. But if you're ever thinking about doing hydroponics, this 5-gallon bucket will support at least 4 to 7 plants in this little space. So even in your own soil-based garden, you're probably never going to get productivity in this little bit of space if you want. This is a 10-gallon tote, and I can get 10 to 12 plants in a 2-foot by 15-inch area. So it's very, very cost-effective and high productivity.
Larry, if I wanted to do something like a tomato plant, would I need a big tote like that?
There'd be a special basket called wide lip basket that just fits over the top of this. This is these holes are too small for a tomato, but I do raise my tomatoes in 5-gallon buckets versus here. And the 2 tomatoes I have, if I'm if all things go well, I hope to have tomatoes by the end of June. Last year I had them the third week of January. Anyone beat me?
Not us.
So if you like the cardboard tomatoes that you get in the store in December, January, February, March, then keep going to the store. Otherwise, you can raise them yourself, and they're a lot better, I think. And certainly much more healthy. Sure.
How do you cut the holes when you make like the tote? Like that looks like something I'd get at Target, right? In that tote, right? And
You can get this at Home Depot or no,
Yeah.
not Target.
yeah, they have something like that.
Do
yeah.
they? Okay.
Yeah.
If you get anything like this, look on the bottom to make sure it's food safe. This came from I got this from a Cub store. Anyone eat pastry?
Yeah.
No, unless you have a real small bakery, you don't make your own frosting anymore. You buy it in this bucket. The eggs come in this bucket, or the egg whites come in this bucket. So a lot of stores just have their supplies in these buckets, but that's what you're looking for. So you talk to the bakery manager and say, hey, do you have any buckets and they're for free. They have dozens and dozens of these that they toss or they donate. And who was telling me that, one of the master gardeners was telling me that, where was the Cubs store that you went to?
Right down here in Northeast, right in the quarry,
In the quarry?
and they had a setup where they just said, take what you want.
Yeah, typically for some of my school projects, or in senior projects, if I need literally dozens, I'll, tomorrow morning, my guy works from 3 to 9, I believe. So I have to hit him about 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, look, I'm looking for 5-gallon buckets. You got about a dozen for me, or 2 dozen, or how many buckets? And he saves them for me till Monday morning. So that's kind of cool. So what some of the
Larry, we got.
I have a question.
Sure.
Someone asked me the other day when I was telling him I was coming to this class about tomatoes, and their question was, how do they pollinate?
Easy. Tomatoes don't require pollination. Nothing in the Solanaceae family requires pollination. That's tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and potatoes. They self-pollinate. So I raise tomatoes and peppers in my basement because I don't have any bees or anything flying around the house. It gets killed immediately anyway. So yeah, they don't require pollination. Yeah.
Can you just grab a tomato plant from Bachman's or something, knock the dirt off and put it in one of those?
Yes, sir. Yeah, a good question. I raise all of my plants from seed, and so today you're going to plant some of those, use some of those seeds to plant. We'll look at basil, some Asian greens, and we'll show you some of the pictures in your handout. But yeah, if that's too much work for you, or you don't have the ability to do that, or the interest, buy a good sturdy plant from, let's say Bachman's, but get something that's fairly small, no more than maybe 9 inches. You know, nice sturdy looking plant, and dip it in water. If you dip it in water, you get as much of that soil out, then it should fit in one of these net pots. Yeah, good question, thank you, yeah. And that's really an easy way to go, quite frankly. Starting your own seeds, it's really, you're going to see how easy it is, and at least I hope you'll see how easy it is. But the instant gratification is to buy a couple plants at some of the garden club sales that are going on, probably starting this weekend at the Arboretum. My goal is to hopefully share some information about hydroponics, but also have fun doing it. We're gonna get your hands dirty a little bit, although if you don't want to do that, we've got some gloves that you can work with. But just learn a little bit about hydroponics and whether or not you do it yourself. That would be great. But if not, maybe this would be sort of a fun activity that at some point you can pick up. But
Larry, I just wonder if we could back up on the buckets a little bit, because I also thought it was interesting how there are codes on the bottom of those plastics.
Yeah. These are, I mentioned the food stores like Cub and Byerly's and so forth. Any of you eat cakes and pastries? Yeah. Well, Cubs and Byerly's and all the big stores do not make their frostings anymore. They come in buckets. And this baby is white buttercream for your cake or whatever. But on the bottom, if you remember the numbers 1, 2, 4, or 5, and number 2 is the best food safe number to look for. The numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5 refer to the type of plastic this is, the type of resin that they use, and number 2 is the most versatile. You can freeze this bucket, you can actually put hot water in it, and so forth and so on, and the integrity of the bucket stays the same. Yeah, and the same with the totes. You know, you'll I believe at Home Depot, if you go there, and Menards and Target, just look on the bottom for that number.
So the other numbers are,
1, 2, 4, and 5.
those are also okay?
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, it's just a different kind of plastic. Yeah. But they're all food safe, yeah. And what you'll see, by the way, if you don't see the number, you'll see a triangle on the bottom. Depends where the bucket comes from. Sometimes if they come from Canada, you won't see the USDA triangle, but you'll see the number 2, for example. So, yeah.
Could you do us a favor and show the roots again? I think a
Sure.
couple people just joined us, so.
Sure.
Why is that important for the growing the plants? I mean, is it, if you have one that doesn't have those numbers, does it damage the plants or something? Or
No, you'll die. Because
But other than that, it's
other than
okay.
that, it doesn't hurt the plant, but the interaction of the water and the fertilizer with a non-food safe will leach out. You know, these are made from oil-based, petroleum. So that'll leach out and you'll eat it. And that's the problem with it, yeah. Yeah, for those of you who've come in late, this is from my, so I've got 6 of these in my basement, and I'm finishing up with these particular crops now, and I'm moving it outside. So I also have a soil-based garden, which is 30 by 50. I also have about, this year I'm only gonna have about 50 containers, all with soil, but I like to grow things hydroponically. This is the root system that I was referring to a little bit before. And this is kale and some lettuce, but I raise, or I grow just a wide variety of salad greens in all winter long. And was interesting for me to hear, how many of you were born on a farm? Yeah. When I talk to folks, not only in the metro area, but Alexandria and so forth, farm country, as soon as I talk about raising things in water, almost all of the men will just kind of lean back a little bit, fold their arms, and kind of look at me cross-eyed, say, give me a break. When my field floods, the corn is about this high. And again, as I said earlier, plants don't grow in soil, they grow in the air that's in the soil. They grow in the air the airspace that you keep in your bucket or your tote. So in your system, do you have a bubbler? Do you have like an air pump that introduces air?
I don't know what I have. I just got like a packet of dirt. It looks like something really generic. It was just, I got it at a garage sale.
It's got soil?
It's got like a little compressed soil that you add water to and it gets bigger. And it comes with seeds and a little planter. I was gonna bring it with me.
Yeah, I don't know if that's hydroponic or not,
It
but
says
okay.
hydroponic
Is
on
it?
the outside.
Okay. Well, be careful. Sometimes with marketing, they come with pretty creative ideas, but yeah, it could be. But that's the deal. When I take these home to germinate them for you, as this fits in the bucket or wherever, the water just hits the bottom of this net pot, and then I've got about roughly 2 inches of air, and that's where the root system grows. And as the plant grows, the root system extends to the bottom of your container, so there's less and less water. By the end of the year, typically, I pulled these out last night and I kept them outside, so I think they look a little tired, but this is gonna be dinner tonight if they last. But this root system typically will fill the whole bottom of this tote after 4 or 5 months.
What is the difference between rain gutter systems? Like I see a lot on Facebook, people do rain gutter stuff and hydroponics.
Well, it is a hydroponic system. The difference is that rain gutters, for example, are often in other formats are used commercially, high production. There are several hydroponic commercial outfits right here in the metro area, and they would never use a bucket or a tote. Okay, this is more for the homeowner. What they're doing are rain gutters and just tables like this, maybe filling, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, 70,000 square feet of containers, yeah. And in fact, there is a place out, I just read the article, I think it's in California, where it's almost like an automobile factory. They have a series of containers, a little bit more elaborate than rain gutters, but they start the plant here, and it just keeps moving in this, anyone been to Disneyland or Disney World, you know, those short lines that you keep going, you get dizzy, yeah. And by the time it ends up at the end of the factory, it's ready to harvest. But it's very high production. And here, sorry?
It's like a conveyor?
Exactly, yeah. But that's high bucks. I mean, you're talking about, actually millions of dollars to set that up. And again, there's one in Edina where I live, and there's the major one in St. Paul, a former brewery. And then if any of you donate to Second Harvest, they donate a lot of food, in fact, a lot of food throughout the year, and now they're gonna grow their own vegetables in the winter so they can donate them, all hydroponically. And but the interesting thing about the local people, they don't allow, or they haven't allowed me anyway, to look at their facility. So I have a feeling that maybe they're doing something special that they don't want to, they don't want to share that trade secret with anyone. And so.
Yeah, we had, actually, because since we do tours, we had contacted a couple of those places. We thought it'd be really interesting to see them. But what we were told is because they're raising food for commercial use, they can't have tours coming through and with the contamination or whatever.
Lies.
For
all
you,
lies.
Larry, it might have been a different
All
reason, I
lies.
don't know.
Yeah. But in a way that, and there is a health concern because this lettuce or kale is just growing out just as you see it. And theoretically, so I haven't been on a tour, but theoretically you could walk right up to the plant and touch it.
It's far-fetched though, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's far-fetched.
Far-fetched?
Yeah, to say that we're gonna contaminate the plants by going to. Maybe they've got something else going on.
Well,
that we don't know.
if any of you smoke, does anyone smoke? If you smoke, you will transfer, if you touch one of my tomato plants or solanaceae plants, you'll transfer something called tomato or tobacco virus on the plant simply by touching it. And that's why in my garden, no offense, but no one it's fenced off and no one goes into my garden. First of all, I don't know what's on your shoes because I don't want you to bring anything in my garden. And there's always a tendency to touch. When my wife goes shopping, she has to touch every single item and tell you why it doesn't work with her wardrobe or whatever. I said, move on. Don't bother me with why it doesn't work. What does work? Do any of you guys do that?
They can't say it, they can't say it.
Or is that just only?
You think we'd admit there with our spouses here? Yeah, I mean,
Don't go shopping. Those little neti baskets, did you say where you got those?
Net pots.
Net pots.
Yeah, you can buy these online, Amazon, for maybe about 25 cents a piece, thereabouts. Or you can go to a place, there are several hydroponic stores in the metro area. One is called Midwest Supplies, Highway 100 in Excelsior. And then if you live anyone more towards the east side of the city, here, east of here, you can go to Eco Gardens, which is they do nothing but hydroponics. But the average price locally is somewhere between 17 cents and say 25 cents. And you can reuse these.
And you can get them different sizes too.
Get
By the
different-
way, I happen to get those at Eco Garden, and I happen to have a business card from them, so I'll pass that around or lay it out here in case anybody's interested,
Yeah,
so.
they're very good, yeah. So, any other questions on just the general concept of hydroponics?
Are they primarily inside or can you have them outside?
Both.
Both, you can.
Right now, I'm raising them, I'm finishing up inside,
Yeah.
but I've already moved out. I raise things on PVC tubes, and I grow vertically. So my PVC tubes in an area 5 feet by 18 inches wide, I can get 44 plants. And actually, I can get 44 plants in a space smaller than this by growing vertically. Some of you who do soil-based gardening, one of the major advantages for me, you don't amend the soil. because there's no soil. If you have a rototiller, have a garage sale. No wheelbarrows, no bags of fertilizer, no compost. You don't have to bring anything heavy. The heaviest thing will be a bucket of water that you'll use, that you have to carry around. Yes, ma'am.
You haven't talked about light
Sure.
source.
Good. Yeah, if you guys want to know that. Fluorescent light. If you're doing it outdoors, you need no light. And if you do it outdoors and you want to use buckets, the whole process can be free for you, because you're going to get this from Cub or Byerly's or your favorite food store, for example. Go to the bakery department, and if you want to talk to the manager, go early, as in before 8 o'clock, because that person is going to get out by 8, 9, or 10 in the morning, and then everyone else takes over. But lights. Can you see the color of these lights? Kind of whitish. This is these. I don't know what the Kelvin is, but if you buy, you need a fluorescent light. I call it a shop light, to grow indoors. Forget about growing them by a windowsill. They're going to be too spindly, and you'll never get the productivity. So if you buy a shop light, Menards, Home Depot, I don't work for them, Lowe's, get them on sale for about a $10 to $15 bill. 4 feet, and with 4 feet, you can get exactly 2 of these totes underneath. So let's say this tote is going to cost you about a $8 bill with tax. The shop light is going to cost you, let's just say $15. The bulbs, 2-pack, will cost you another $10 or $12. But for under $50, you'll be able to raise 20 plants in the space that you see in front of me. That's not too bad.
And is that the right kind of plastic, the flat one, the big one?
Is this the kind of, the food safe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get these at Home Depot. I used to buy some at Mills Fleet Farm, but I haven't seen the numbers on the bottom anymore, so I don't go there anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe they are food safe, but I want to see that number, or I want to see that symbol. But Home Depot is okay. And the size I get, this is 2 feet, round numbers, 2 feet by 15 inches by 9 inches high. The plants don't need depth, so if you see a tote that's deeper in one of these stores, you don't really need it. 9 inches is plenty, or the bucket size. Yeah.
So when you, Larry, I've seen, when he talks about PVC pipe, he's gotten a fat pipe about like this, and then puts 2 end caps on it and drills the holes in the top. Now, that's not 9 inches of growth, but that's still enough for those plants.
Yeah, because the plants, if I use a 4-inch tote, just what you said, the plants will hit the bottom of the tube and then just spread out automatically. And by the end of the summer, almost that entire tube is filled with roots, with maybe only an inch of water, with fertilizer. Yeah.
And again, color for summer if you're going outside, because you talked about the clear ones growing so much algae.
Yeah, thank you.
Ah.
Yeah, if you get a tote, don't get a clear plastic tote, because the sun UV light will create algae, and the water will be green. It's not going to mess up the plants too much, but you're going to say, but it looks pretty ugly, and you're pretty sure that the plant will suffer. No, so get a snappy gray, black, blue, and that works okay. Yeah, and the product that I get, again, I'm not selling these. This is a Rubbermaid product called Roughneck. It's maybe $1 more, but the walls are thicker. Water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. This is a 10-gallon tote, so there could be as much as 70 to 80 pounds here. The sides will bulge if it's a cheap one, and this cover will never fit. So just be careful of that. So for the extra couple pennies, I just get the Rubbermaid product, commercial product. Again, you can buy it in Menards, Home Depot, so forth and so on. It works pretty well. Yes, sir.
For outdoors, does it make a difference between shade and sun, or where you?
Depends what you're growing. In other words, if I'm growing tomatoes, peppers, and so forth, or kale, I'll put it in full sun.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm raising lettuce, which is a lot of what I do, I want morning sun and maybe very, very early afternoon sun. But on or about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I want it to be in shade. Do you know what bolting is? Do you know the term bolting? If lettuce and other greens, if the temperature gets too hot too quickly and it's in full sun, it'll send up a flower stalk. which immediately changes the chemistry of the plant. It makes it more bitter. So now the plant wants to make babies, a seed stalk. That's what bolting is called. You don't want that. So it depends what I'm growing, but my tomatoes are always in as much sun as I can give them. Cucumbers, as much sun as I can give them, peppers and so forth. And on my deck, right now I've got, what do I have? I have set up only 4 this year. White will reflect the heat a little bit. So I've got the 2 tomato plants, cucumbers, and peppers. So that's gonna be my hydroponic salad for this coming year, yeah.
This is a picture of Larry's tubes he's got in his yard. You can see
Oh, yeah.
how they're hanging, he's got different little hanging
Yeah.
options for them.
2 questions. Oh my gosh. One,
Those are
normally in
PVC
soil,
tubes, right? And
plants
then
do pick up
hanging.
nutrients from
Yep.
the soil.
Yep.
Gosh.
Isn't that
How
cool?
do you provide the nutrients in the water?
I've seen his
And
yard, so
also,
I have that experience,
tap
but
water?
isn't that
Yep.
cool?
Yeah, you
PVC
can only
tubes in the yard.
use hydroponic fertilizer with a hydroponic system. And a good question about soil, there's no soil, yours or mine included, that has all 13 to 16 of the natural elements that a plant needs. So when you buy fertilizer, for example, for your soil-based garden, almost everyone will have 3, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Every single fertilizer has to have those 3 letters. Now, the first number may be 0, say, but the NPK, and then you'll see below that some trace elements. Maybe calcium is in there, magnesium, I don't know. But a good hydroponic fertilizer has all 13. So the plant doesn't, as I said earlier, doesn't have to search for all the food it needs. Usually you get 30 to 50% faster growth and higher yield with hydroponics because it's constantly in food. In your garden, it almost never is. You can put in fact, what's today, Thursday? I can put fertilizer on my garden today, and if we get the heavy rain that they're expecting, it's gonna leach out. It's gonna be diluted anyway, so, yeah. And I do use tap water. I live in Edina, the water's very hard there, but the plants seem to do well. Yeah, don't worry about chlorine, it's not gonna kill you, and chlorine dissipates in about 24 hours anyway. But some of the things that the city might put in the water, like chlorine or fluoride, fluoride is a natural element. Chemical symbol is F, and it's fine. You know, it works okay for you. Yes.
Maybe you'll get into this, or maybe you covered it, but a couple of questions. One is, well, I guess, what would be the first step if you had like a starter, or if you had seeds with putting them in there? Like and how often do you water it, or how often is how big is the water start off in there? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what would you, if I was wanting to start this, would I start with a seedling, and if it was that high, how do I take care of it?
Is she one of our guests? You're gonna be doing that in wherever Ann tells me to
That's
shut
what I
up.
figured so, but
Yeah.
those are like,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, I would love to do this, but I don't know I don't know how to do this.
The first steps you will all do in a few minutes
Cool.
or whenever, yeah, starting the seed. But to answer your question about water, again, if you're working with a bucket,
Yeah.
you fill up the bucket just so it touches the bottom of the net
So
pot.
because of that huge difference, you would fill it up pretty high.
Yeah, this is a 5-gallon bucket, so you're putting in at least 4 gallons of water.
Okay.
This is a 10-gallon tote. You're probably putting in not 9 gallons, but maybe 8.5-ish.
Okay, so
But
just
again,
touching
just
the bottom.
so long, yeah.
And you refill it then when it goes low?
If I have this bucket outside, which I do, and I'm raising lettuces, I may not have to think about watering it for a month
Oh, okay.
because it will not evaporate that much. If I raise a tomato plant in here, I may have to do it every 2 weeks if the temperature gets into the 80s.
Okay.
The plants, tomatoes suck up a lot, cucumbers suck up a lot of the fertilizer and the nutrient, plus I have evaporation.
Okay, so you mainly want to have kind of the water touching it somehow? Is that
Yeah.
what you're looking for?
Initially touching the net pot,
Yeah.
but then as the roots grow,
Yeah, they'll
The water,
touch.
it may only be just 2 inches, 3
Right.
inches in the tote, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's just good to know how to like upkeep it.
yeah.
We did a couple of totes like this across the street at the senior center last year. You guys planted them and we grew them over there and they harvested them for lunch and whatever. And they said about once a month they would check the water level, just peek under and see and
Yeah.
add a little bit of water. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like you're watering them every other
Right.
day, right? I mean, it's,
No, if for example, if some of you go to the lake or go away in the summer for a month or so, once you've got sufficient water in there, and let's assume, I mean, if the temperature gets 105, okay. But if it stays around a normal, whatever normal is in the 80s while you're gone, you probably will not have to water at all. So you'll never say that about a soil-based garden. I mean, you're gonna have to add some, or it's either got the rain, or, you know, they say a minimum of an inch a week, but that's not true. If I have sandy soil, do any of you live up in Anoka? Okay, that's a sandy plain up there. They're watering every other day. And if we get 2 or 3 inches of rain, let's say tonight, within 3 days, they're gonna have to water.
But they-
Where I live, it's heavy clay.
They have this gadget that, like I think at Menards and stuff, that fits into your plant and it just waters it wherever it needs it.
Yeah.
that works well for pots. It is not so what,
Not for
growing a
soil,
big
yeah.
vegetable garden or something,
Yeah.
right? So, yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Yes?
yeah, good point though.
We have a small fleet of deer that like our backyard. It's kind of woody. I noticed that your pipes were probably set out to keep rabbits
Yep.
away.
Yeah.
What can we do for the deer to?
Well, there is a product called DAWG, dog. And the deer will bother my tomatoes in the fall when they need to bulk up for the winter. Now, they can jump my fence, but I don't usually have trouble with deer throughout the season, generally. But so I'm more concerned about the rabbits. Forget the squirrels, but the rabbits. So all my, in fact, what I like about hydroponics, some of you are almost as old as I am. I'm gardening at 30 inches height, so I don't have to kneel down anymore. I don't have to bend down anymore.
You've
And
got
ma-
them on tables and things.
Yeah, they're all on tables, and it's easy for me to fall down, but getting up is I don't know why, but that seems like the harder part for me. So as far as rabbits go and woodchucks, if you have that in your area, I'm not gonna say 100%, but you won't have that problem. But deer, towards the end of the summer, yeah, and what they'll do is they won't eat the leaves as much as the actual fruit. They'll eat the actual tomato, green or red, it doesn't matter, yeah. So that's kind of fun.
Well, what we've learned about deer and master gardeners, it's a big issue for a lot of people. I've seen one master gardener on our garden tour had a high-powered circulating sprinkler that was a motion sensor, and she said it was as much the surprise that scared them off. And then I've also heard that you can put up like fishing line, just that if they walk into it, they don't like it, and then they back off. Of course, you have to put tags so that you don't walk into it too, right? Because you can't see it, so there are a few things,
What
but
about cut hair? Isn't cut hair supposed to be
No,
something?
yeah. As soon as it gets wet, it's gone.
The-
You can use blood meal, which is what it is, from dried blood from slaughterhouses. Works great
for,
unless you have humidity or rain, and then the smell dissipates. Any of you, some of you are my vintage, if you remember the old style marigolds that had a fragrance.
Yes.
I think some people called it a smell. That's what kept the deer away, and the problem now is that all of us as consumers don't like that stink. So they buy double flowers that look pretty, and the rabbits, that's yum-yum food. I mean, it has no deterrent at all. So it's the smell
Smells like
of a lot of these plants that deter animals. And as consumers, we say, no, we don't want that smell, and so we're really inviting them in.
Smells like something else.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
so-
Do you ever do companion planting for pest control?
I do companion planting for insect control, and just in case you want to know, no plant transfers its flavor to another plant. I companion plant tomatoes with basil, and if you read things like from Rodale or some of the organic, they say that it makes the tomato better. It's impossible. Genetically, it's impossible. What happens is the insect is attracted to the fragrance of, let's say, your tomato or of your lettuce plant. So by interplanting, you confuse not every insect, but most of them, because they can't zero in on that petunia. Why? Because you've got planted with onions. In my raised beds, for example, I have cole crops in one bed, 4 feet by 20 feet, broccoli, cabbage, and so forth, kohlrabi, if you know what that is, some turnips. In between those plants, I put onions, because that is a different smell, flavor, and that will hopefully deter some.
The reason I ask is, I used to do square foot gardening,
Okay?
and companion planting was really effective,
Yeah,
I thought.
yeah. And now in that square foot, or next to that square foot, did you have the same plant, or was it a different plant?
Very similar to what you did. I had my box, 9 squares,
Yep.
and then between the tomatoes and the cukes or whatever, then there would be onions, or there'd be carrots, or there'd be,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever was recommended.
Yeah, thanks for that, good. Again, my guess is you didn't stop 100% of the insects, but you probably stopped a heck of a lot of them. And that's the different fragrances, because most insects will hone in on your vegetable crops, some by sight, but mostly by smell. And by doing what you just did, or what I do, companion planting, it can help. My problem with companion planting, as some authors say it, is if I plant basil with tomatoes, it's going to enhance the flavor of the tomato. And that came out of the Renaissance, where a tomato is a poison, or was thought to be a poison. It came out of South America. Belladonna, you ladies used to put that in your eyes to dilate your eyes because it was a sign of beauty. Not to mention that you probably went blind after about 10 or 15 years. But belladonna is a poison. And if you eat the leaves of a tomato plant, it's poisonous. Well, okay, as you, where do I want to go with that? As you,
We forgot.
Yeah, we forgot, okay.
yeah, really.
We're with you.
Shall we
Sure.
talk about, just a minute about this, and then we'll get
Sure.
started planting? Okay.
If you, yeah, question?
One other thing though, could you tell them where to buy the nutrients?
The nutrients?
Or the water.
Or a brand.
Fertilizer.
Same stores, Midwest Supplies, and or Eco Gardens.
Garden supply, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, if you go to Midwest Supplies and you change your mind that you don't want to be bothered with hydroponics, the other half of the store you can shoot up with the wine making and beer making kits. So you know, if you're not into green leafy stuff, you can raise booze.
Do you need to replenish the fertilizer when you add water?
Not always. On my tomato plants in my basement, I put them in the buckets in the middle of March, and yesterday was the first time that I drained that water out. It was about still half full, and then added new cold water, never hot, never warm, and fertilizer. If you add fertilizer every time that you add water, it could be too strong. And the interesting thing about hydroponic fertilizer, it's very concentrated. So if you're familiar with Miracle Grow, 1 tablespoon per gallon. Most hydroponic fertilizers is a teaspoon per gallon. So in this 10-gallon tote, I'm using 2.5 tablespoons versus 10 tablespoons. So it's very concentrated. And ladies, I don't want to get cute here, but I want you to do what all of us men do. Read the directions. What? What's so funny about that? Read the right? Don't you read the directions? Say thank you.
Larry, you better be politically correct.
Yes, I think,
I warn you.
there you go.
I'm trying, with tomatoes, I'm changing the fertilizer mix a little bit, so I'm using my normal one, and then a fertilizer designed specifically to have a bigger and better flowers, or bigger and better fruit, better tasting fruit. In the 5-gallon bucket that I'm using, the directions were a teaspoon per 5 gallons. Now that's pretty concentrated stuff. But, so my tendency, if I garden outside, is, what's an extra handful of fertilizer, my little can is almost done, so I'll just use it up. It doesn't, because I know it's gonna be diluted with rain and so forth. Hydroponics, no. Here's the ecosystem. And if you put in too much fertilizer, literally you'll kill the plant. I mean, the plant won't like that. So to answer your question, yes, you may add water, but maybe you add fertilizer every second month, maybe. So the little can I had in my other bucket, it was only 14 ounces. It took me 2 years to use that amount of fertilizer with all the hydroponics I do. So you're not talking about 100-pound bags or 20-pound bags. You're talking about maybe a pound of fertilizer. It's going to last you 2 or 3 years. Yes, sir.
When you drain the water out of there to change it, can you take that drained water and dump it on your regular in-ground garden?
Absolutely. Yeah. By the way, let me give you a product. Who raises tomatoes or flowers? Okay. They're different trade names, but you'll see the word. One company's called General Hydroponics. They market something called, I think it's called this Super Bloom, but the word bloom is on there. I can use that indoors, hydroponically, or outdoors, and any plant that makes a flower. Or if you're raising peppers, tomatoes, for example, cucumbers, you can use that same same fertilizer. The fertilizer that I just referred to is called Hula, H-U-L-A. That's the.
Can we see that again?
No, that's a teaspoon. That's a teaspoon per 5 gallons. Very concentrated. There's no nitrogen in it, but there's 40% phosphorus. So it's pretty powerful stuff. And it's got some calcium in it to prevent some other diseases. So yeah.
Yeah, why don't we get to our planting, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. After you've had some hands-on, you may have some different questions.
We've got, you're going to be planting a lot of what you see in this take-home. So this is what the plant looks like. But if you guys will just go to these back tables, anywhere. But if I don't, and you can put 36 net pots in here, and they, 9 by 4. But if I don't pack 2 sides, then these are going to fall over when I, put them in the car or jostle them around. So there's 2 ways that I do it. I take any extra peat or perlite and just, pack it on one side. Or if I don't want to waste my perlite for some reason, or my peat, I'll just take a couple towels and gently put them in here, Larry, so they don't move things around. I should have some of you do this too. But just pack it in here a little bit, and you don't need to step on it or slam it in there too heavy, because now what I'm going to do is let the water pack it in for me. And so what'll happen is this water will then typically prevent most of these from tipping over. And so you can move them around your house or wherever you are. Did you guys water these?
No.
Okay. And then this is a watering can that I own the patent to.
I made it 2 weeks ago.
There's
Very clever.
and it's in the book. But anyway, most watering cans that you buy have a strong stream, even though it has a top, and so it'll wash out the seeds. So buy a carton of milk, or just a half gallon of milk. Maybe drink the milk if you want, but dump out the milk. And again, I don't want to be cute here, but for some of you ladies, if you're used to sew and you have a thicker needle, heat the end and make
Yes, sir.
I use an all, AWL, if you
Yeah.
know it, but yeah.
Yes.
And so I make very fine holes first. And then as I look at this, I say, okay, this is coming out almost the flow that I want. I'm done. If it comes out too weak, I'll take my awl back or your needle and just make the hole a little bigger. The problem is if you make a big hole in the beginning, you can't make it smaller after that.
And buy another half gallon of milk.
So buy another half gallon of milk, yeah.
Try again.
Or whatever.
And the reason why I'm watering this down, a couple is to help the seeds germinate, but also to pack that, the peat and the down, and you're done. And,
Do those come
no,
with
I'm
beer?
gonna, no, I'm gonna put in.
That's a good question.
What?
Do those come with beer in them?
Well, I might.
She has a question.
Sure.
So does it need to be in a warm environment?
Normally, yeah, do these seeds have to be in a warm environment? Heat is required to germinate seeds. Once they germinate, I put them out where it's cool. So what I'll do with these, I think this next week is gonna be a little cool, but I'm gonna put these outside. I won't even put these under fluorescent lights. So I've got racks on my porch that I'll just put these in, and as soon as they germinate, then I start moving them out into the sun to harden them over. But to answer your question, if you have the setup as I do, I would take these, put them in my basement under fluorescent lights, and just wait a week or two until they germinate. And then bring them outside, or just keep them inside, if it's in the winter and you want to grow it all winter long. But you do need fluorescent lights. And by the way, I'm gonna put some fertilizer examples on the board for you in a bit, but this light is what we call the white light or cool light. The whiter the light, it's in Kelvin, it's not how hot it is, but it's the temperature of the light waves. The closer it is to 6,500, the closer it is to the sunlight. So any fluorescent light from 5,100 K or higher is basically sunlight.
So would this qualify?
This light would, yeah, I can't tell exactly, but because I see it's white, it's at least 5,500 K. If some of you have seen what's called soft light, it's like a yellowish light, that's around 3,000 Kelvin, 4,100 Kelvin. And sometimes what some growers would do, and I experiment with it, if this is my lighting system, I'll have two lights that are white, cool, and two that are soft. That's the entire spectrum that you'll see outdoors on a cloudy day or a sunny day, and the plants live happily ever after. For my tomatoes, I'm experimenting with all 6,500 K. And the way I do it in my basement, I don't have a finished basement or that part on the basement. So you hang the light vertically. This is horizontal, and I have mostly heirloom tomatoes. They can grow 7, maybe even 8 feet. I only have an 8-foot basement. It's gonna grow into the light. I don't want it to do that. So I'll top it, I'll trim it off the top, but I'll take that suspended light, and instead of hanging it horizontally, I just hang it vertically. And as the plant grows in my bucket, I have it on a chain, I just raise the chain, and I'm done. So the light follows the tomato right up there. Very, very simple to do.
Do you have to turn your bucket so that it gets full light all the way around?
Well, I have 2 lights. I have 3 buckets down there with just 2 lights. And the short answer is, yes, I could be turning them if I see it go cockeyed. But the plant doesn't care if it grows cockeyed or not. It's we want it to grow straight. So yeah, I turn it. But normally, if you have lights, let's just say 2 lights on both sides of your buckets, you shouldn't have to do that.
Now, that's fluorescent type bulbs, not the
Incandescent. Use fluorescent, thank you, or LEDs. LEDs are a little bit more expensive to begin with. I have the old-fashioned lighting fixtures for the fluorescent, the big fat bulbs called T12, and they still work. If you're looking for energy efficiency over time, only go with LEDs. That's the newest technology. They'll cost a little bit more to buy them today, but if you have them for most LEDs and even the newer fluorescent lights are lasting 36,000 hours. I run my lights 6 months out of the year. That gives me almost 10 years life out of that one bulb. I don't know if I'm gonna be around in 10 years, but the bulb should be around in 10 years, yeah. So as you look at 2 things, is the lumens how long is this gonna last? And most of the new fluorescent LEDs are 36,000 or higher, most. And look for the Kelvin of 5100 or higher. Now, Menards has an 8,000 Kelvin bulb that I haven't tested yet, and that's some pretty heavy-duty stuff. Yeah, because the standard used to be 6,500, and now they've got 8,000. So I'm tempted to try that next winter, yeah.
I know, Larry, when we did, the bed across the street, Costco at the time had a pair of LED lights for $20.
Yep.
And so we got a little, nice energy efficiency for inexpensive price, and that was the fixtures and the bulbs.
Yep.
So you
Yeah.
can get
You keep
deals.
those lights on 24 hours?
No,
or-
no, 14 to 16 hours a day.
Oh,
Yeah, and if I use, let's say I keep them on for at least 15 hours a day, that's average. And I start them, I'll start my indoor garden on or about September, and now with May, on or about June 1st, they'll all be gone from my basement, or except for my tomatoes. I have to keep them in, I don't want to move them while they're fruiting. So that's at least 6 months. I'm gonna get a minimum of 8 years out of 2 bulbs that are gonna cost me $12. So if my only expense is a $12 bill every 5, 6, 7 years, that's, that's kind of chump change for me,
Yep.
so, yeah.
How are you supporting your tomato plants as they grow? They always need some kind of support.
I do 2 ways to support tomato plants in buckets. Again, I have an unfinished ceiling, so I tie twine around the base, and I string it up to an S-hook in the floor joists. And as the plant grows, I just take the twine and wrap it around the tomato plant. The other way is, do any of you have supports for plants, like for flowers? They're usually round. Yeah. I don't know about you, but my basement is concrete, so I can't stick it in the concrete. I just invert it so the wide circular side is on the concrete floor, and the pointy legs are towards the ceiling. So as the plant grows, it stays in that cone, and I don't even have to use string usually. Yeah. I want to write a couple. I'll answer more of your question, but I do want to have hydroponic fertilizer. I lied. I said it took me 2 years to use up. It took me 3 years. 14 ounces. 14 ounces. This is the one you use, a teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon and a half per gallon.
What would she asked, how much would something like that cost?
In 2014, it cost $21 in 3 years. Ain't too bad. Yeah. Now and this, by the way, this is a pretty good product called Supernatural. I prefer now for lettuces, greens. The parent company is called Oasis, but they market it under the trade name Jack's. You can get this, I assume, at the Hydroponic store, Amazon. 16:4:17, higher level of nitrogen. So your lettuces, your Asian greens, your kales will grow a lot faster. By contrast, Supernatural is 11% nitrogen versus 16. So this does pretty well. I think this does better. So you may want to, if it's hydroponics, if it's from General Hydroponics, Oasis, Supernatural, I think they've been around almost forever. I think they're pretty reputable. The other thing, I did not bring this as an example, my fault, but a wide lip basket is what would fit over this 5-gallon bucket, okay? The real name is wide lip baskets, but if you go to Eco Gardens or Midwest, they may call it baskets. But anyway, the word basket, they come typically in 6, 8, or 10-inch sizes that will fit a standard bucket. As I said, anything from 3.5 gallons to a 6-gallon, it just fits right over the top. So if you want to press it down, fine. But I like to keep mine loose. I mean, it's not going to walk away on me. And then if I want to take a peek at the water or whatever, I can. But you would want to use wide lip baskets if you're going to grow tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, or cucumbers. Okay? They need a little bit of extra space. However, you can also use the 10-inch basket to have multiple lettuces. up to 7. Here, my example here is only 4, and that's fine. But I'm from New England originally, and I see all this white space, goes to waste. So I will drill in 3 other holes in here. But even if you did 4, if you're doing square foot planting, you will never get higher yield per square foot than with this sort of hydroponics. Pretty impressive, yeah.
Larry, can you talk about the tools you use to drill those things?
Yeah, I did not bring it. You would need a 2-inch hole saw. 2-inch hole saw. And I like the 2-inch variety because they're fairly inexpensive, maybe a $10 bill. But that's what you need if you're gonna use the 2-inch net pot.
And that fits on the end of a drill, right?
It fits on the end of the drill. You're drilling your holes, as many as you want. This tote has 10. If any of you, do any of you know what microgreens are? Do you buy microgreens in the store, lettuces? Those are those plastic bags of different kinds of lettuces, for example, about 3 or 4 inches, that are much more expensive than anything else you're gonna see. Grow your own, and if you
a theme here about Larry's very economical.
if microgreens are what you like, I can put 12 in a stretch, maybe even 13 holes in the same space. Okay. I never let my lettuce grow probably taller than this, because I'm harvesting it as microgreens, just a couple inches, where my maybe something like this, and from the outside. Never cut it in the inside, because if you just take the outer leaves out, while it's nice and tender, then the plant will keep producing. I say these plants have been producing since January, so not too bad. Okay, don't tell me I'm gonna have a green in my teeth, but I don't care. If you're wondering what the taste, who tried the kale? Yeah, not too bad.
Amazing.
Yeah,
So
not
much
too
sweeter
bad.
than commercial.
Oh, can I taste it?
You can?
Do you mind me to take a little leaf or?
No, I don't care. This is
Not
this is gonna go away anyway. What you'll note now the lettuce plants are a little wilted because I picked these last night, but the difference is the lettuce will be what I call buttery. It's not gonna be mushy, but to me the taste is gonna be okay.
Which one do you want me to take?
Anyone, but
Here, I took
this
off
is
of
This one right here?
Sure,
I
whatever.
took off the end of this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
just, okay.
If it's,
Pass that around, see if anybody else wants.
Yeah.
I don't know if yeah.
Wanna try it? Just pass it?
It is good.
Now that everyone touched it, if you get salmonella or E. coli,
Don't blame
not for me. But anyway, what I like about the lettuce, for hydroponic, and some of you said, what's the advantage? Actually, tonight, this was gonna be my supper, but that's all right. When I go down to pick enough for salad, there's no waste. I mean, if there's just my wife and I just pick a bowl that the 2 of us will eat that night. I don't have to refrigerate it or anything, so it gets, more mushy, that you buy in the store. So it's a great way, I think, of being fairly conservative with, instead of buying, anyone belong to Costco? You buy a truckload you buy the truckload. Fine if you got a big family, but otherwise, that stuff is kicking around for a couple days. And if it's in the refrigerator, I don't care who grew it, it's gonna get, a little wilted and not have that nice crispness that, that maybe you like, so. And if you don't like that, kind of buttery texture, or this is very soft, whatever, when you buy lettuce in the store or kale, the stem is always gonna be thicker, okay? The wind makes it thicker. So I set up a fan sometimes for maybe just a couple hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week, and that's the wind, and that's in my basement, and that, so if for some reason you don't like it soft or buttery or whatever, you just turn a fan on, yeah.
Do you have any copies of your book today?
I have a couple in the car, yeah, otherwise Amazon.
How much?
If you go on Amazon, I make more money, by the way. It costs you $28, but here's $20 if you want them today. So it'll save you a couple of bucks. Any other questions before I get kicked off here? No?
Let's give Larry a round of applause.